Hey guys, thanks for checking out my video. This video serves as an introduction to shark fishing from the beach, also known as land-based shark fishing. It's basically just a once-over from the equipment that I use to the bait choice, bait rigging, methods of emplacement, and then successful release of the fish and removal of the hook. Feel free to fast forward anything that you find pertinent, and I appreciate you checking out my video.
Okay, so as mentioned before, this is just a once-over of some of the bare minimum stuff that you could get away with to do your shark fishing from the beach. First and foremost, the due diligence is on you to make sure that you look up the different laws and different things that are necessary to do shark fishing. Some beaches are not going to let you do that. Most places are going to kind of frown upon it either way. Even if you're letting them go or if you're keeping them, they're still going to have their issues with you doing it from the beach. So generally the best time to do it is at night, when there's less people around, and then that's also when the sharks are most active. The first thing I would say is after you bought your fishing license and you've gone online and purchased that, depending on what state you're in, some of them just need the license and it's about $5 to $15 for just a week, and then there's different ones depending on whether you're a non-resident or not. And then in Florida now I'm told that you need another permit to do specifically shark fishing. But once you've done that, then you can come down here and you would look to probably get you one of these pamphlets. It's going to give you a little once-over of what the different species are in the water. This one specifically for North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. Gives you a rundown of all the different fish that are out there, but specifically paying attention to the different types of sharks because you're going to be ultimately responsible for what happens to those sharks when you catch them. So you want to make sure that you're catching the right ones if you're going to keep one to eat, or if you're releasing it, you just want to make sure you know what you have on the line once you get it to the beach. Also, part of that helps is having some kind of tape measure or ruler that's going to let you know in case you can't eyeball what 54 inches is, and the different regulations that there are with that. Once you do that, probably the most important piece of being able to do this is having your rod and reel set up. And so without endorsing any specific ones, this is just one of my setups that I have. It's the Penn Senator series. This one specifically is a 9/0. It's a 9/0, and then it's on a Shakespeare rod. So with the rod and reel, if you're not super familiar with what you're looking at, the bigger the reel is going to be better for the bigger sharks. And then you want to also look at the strength that the rod can support. So somewhere on the rod, it's going to tell you what pound test it can support, and it's going to be somewhere up in here. And once you do that, you can kind of pair that with the reel that you have, and then get the line on there that supports what kind of fish you're trying to catch. Specifically for this rod, I have a 200-pound, call it Top Shot. It's the line that you have that's behind the leader. And so this is 200-pound test right here, and then underneath that, so there's about, I believe, around 600 yards of that. Underneath that, you go a little bit lighter, so that way you can get away with having a little bit more line. And I have 80-pound tests underneath that. So you're getting up close to around the 900-yard range on this reel with all the different line that I have on there, which is more than enough to catch the sharks that you can see on my page. But working with that, the more line that you can get away with, the better it's going to be for you and for the fish, because you can bring it in without wearing it out quite as much. Once you have the rod and reel set up, then you come over and you're going to decide which rig you want to use for your hooks. Most of these rigs, I would advise just going ahead and getting one from the store. You can get them prefabricated and made. I make my own now, but basically what you're going for is a steel cable. Right here is going to be around 6 to 10 feet, depending on how big of a shark you're going for. You can get even longer with that. But that's going to be about 400-pound line that you're using there. Steel cable. The steel is important because the skin's really rough, and then their teeth are going to bite through anything less than that. So you can get away with a lot less poundage of steel, but it's still going to have to be some kind of cable, so that way the abrasiveness of their teeth or the skin doesn't break it. Then you go and you pick one that has circle hooks on it. You can use J hooks if you want, but generally the shark's going to swallow that, and then you're going to end up having either a gut hook, a gut hook caught fish that's going to end up probably dying, or it's just going to be harder to get out. So if you use the J hook, you don't have to set it quite as hard. It just kind of sets itself in the corner of its mouth, and then you're going to have a pretty easy time getting that out once you get it to the beach. Connected to that, you're not going to find this in the store this way, but you definitely want to have some monofilament that's attached to your leader. That's going to serve as like a shock cord. It gives you a little bit more play, so when they do hit that bait with the circle hook, it doesn't just go super tight. Like I was mentioning earlier, the line that I had on this was a braid, and so the braid is a lot thinner. You can get a lot more line on there with braid, and so braid to steel cable is not really a very good recipe for a lot of catches. So if you put the monofilament line, this is a 150-pound test right there. It's more than enough. In between those two, it's going to be a lot more successful with your catches. All right, so once you have your rig and now you have your rod and reel set up, and then you're going to decide what kind of weight you're going to use. These spider weights and Sputnik weights are really common and really popular because the way it attaches, it's going to basically grab into the sand and hold the bait where you want it. And you need something really strong because generally you're going to have a lot of yardage of line out, and so that's a lot of pull on the bait wherever it is. And so if you don't have a strong enough weight to hold it, then it's just going to float with the current. So this will hold it, and then once the fish bites it, it'll pop open, and then it's going to basically swim freely with you. So then you're not fighting the weight and the fish, it's just mostly just the fish. There's some other methods out there using rocks and concrete weight to attach that breaks away, but we're just going to be talking about the Sputnik weights here for that. Then once you have that, basically you're good to go on your setup. I use rubber bands. You'll see that later in the video, but the rubber bands are for the bait. It helps hold the hook in place, and then it helps with better presentation and more catches. After that, you're going to need at least a good pair of pliers so that you're able to snip the lines and then also get the hooks out. They also make these. These are this will grab the hook and dehook the shark a lot easier. You don't have to get your hand as close to the mouth. But generally I just use pliers and I'm able to do it. And then a pretty cheap fillet knife is going to do you a lot of good with getting your baits ready in case they're super frozen, and helping you with that. Once you have all of that, another thing from the beach that's pretty essential is the rod holder. So generally you have these stakes, they're PVC pipe stakes that you hammer into the sand, and that's going to basically hold the rod where you need it to while you wait. Otherwise you're going to be sitting there holding the rod for a much longer time, because it can take a couple hours sometimes for them to find the bait. Once you have that, that's really all you would need to be able to successfully catch sharks off the beach and fish in general off the beach. However, some other things that I like to have and I've acquired over time. If you're fishing at night, you might want a headlamp. That's going to help with you being able to see what you're doing, and then see when the fish comes in. You can see when the leader's getting close. You can also use a tail rope. This rope right here, you just put a loop in the end, and then you have another person that's going to help you be able to grab it around the tail and basically bring it up onto the beach without harming the fish, and it's a lot less work for you. You also make these gut buckets, which if you're catching a lot of sharks or really large sharks, you're going to need that eventually, because the rod's going to wear into your side and into your hip if you're not using that. One last piece of equipment that's pretty essential for the method of fishing that I use is an ocean bearing kayak. So basically you have the sit on top, and then you have your paddle. You don't really need anything else other than that. I attach my line, with just this little snap right here. I feed the swivel through there, and then the guy that's paddling out has it attached to him, and then he basically drops it once he gets to the right depth or distance from the beach. You can do it with a river kayak or a lot of different other types of methods. I've used little dinghies, float rafts. I've even used a boogie board once when I was in a pinch, but basically the kayak's going to be the easiest method to getting it out quickly and safely. So hopefully this serves as a once-over for all the equipment that you could need, kind of at the bare minimum level. There's always more stuff that you can buy and add to, just like golf or any other sport or hobby. But with this minimal setup, you should be able to be successful in catching fish. So this is a follow-up to kind of covering all the different equipment that you can use, from the bait caster to spin caster, which drops your bait from the kayak. So we're going to rig the baits. The first one we're going to use is bonita. So two of the good baits that I try to use are bonita or mullet. So like I said, we're going to use bonita first. Bonita you can just buy at the store.
Not every bait shop's going to have it. It's kind of a delicacy, but once you get it, it's one of the best baits that you can use. So what I like to do is I'm going to cut off the tail. So just kind of pick a spot up here where the tail starts. Break that off. And just kind of save that off to the side. Then what I like to do also is break off some of the different fins. Depending on the quality of the bait, if it's frozen and it's really frozen, it's easy to clip off. This one's a little bit of an older bait, so I'm probably just going to leave it. That way it doesn't fall apart once it gets into the water. Once you have your bait picked and you know what you're going to use, then you move over to your rig and your hooks. As explained when we were kind of covering some of the equipment you can use, these are the circle hooks that I'll use. The bigger bait, using 2 hooks is a little bit better for your catch. You have one up near the front and one near the back, and then you'll kind of just work your hooks into your spot where you want it. The hook that's going further back goes in first. You're just trying to get it up under the jaw, something that's strong and sturdy that's going to hold it for being able to sit out there for a few hours. Then run it the length of the fish. Ideally you want the hook to kind of sit like that. So the fish is going to come from behind when it tries to eat it, so it's going to suck up from where the tail was. And again, the tail's off, so it's an easier bite and a catch. Take the hook. It's a circle hook, so it's not as easy to work with, but because it's frozen, you can kind of work it in there. Trying to keep it in the fish as long as you can until the barb comes out. Once you get it out, something like that, you're going to take the rubber bands that I carry with me. You're going to work the rubber bands over that, so that way it holds it nice and tight. Get the second hook working. This piece, depending on how hard the fish's forehead is, you can kind of work it through there. That's a really solid, sturdy spot to hook. If it goes through some of the eye, that's okay. Okay, so that's the presentation of the fish that you're trying to get. As I mentioned before, just a standard rubber band is going to hold that in a really good spot right there. You just want it to be really tight, so that way the hook doesn't wiggle as much. While it's sitting out there, it's going to be defrosting, and so when it thaws out, it's going to kind of get a little bit more pliable. So the rubber band just holds it where you want it. That way the fish can come from behind and bite it that way. Once your hook's set and everything's good, then you're going to work up to the rest of the rig, and you're going to attach it to your rod and reel. So the leader is going to attach to your main line. Nothing fancy there. With heavy line, you only need about 6 twists, but I do a couple extra ones just in case. Dress that up. That's pretty solid right there. And then now your choice is what weight you're going to use. So pretty common is using the Sputnik or the spider weight. And that's simply just one of these
covered in some of the equipment that you can choose to use from. With that, I like to attach it right in the middle of where the leader is going to be. That way you have your shock cord going over to the main line without getting interfered with the weight, and then it goes down to the steel cable. So that'll be attached right there. Once you're done with that, then you attach it to your kayak, and then you're ready to paddle it out. You just drop the weight about 300 to 400 yards, depending on how much line you have. And then basically it'll sit there, reel in the slack, and that'll basically sit there until you have a good bite. So that pretty much covers how you get your bait ready and get your rig ready for fishing. Okay, so here we have our bait attached to the end of the kayak. Just a little D-ring or some kind of little snap link is all you need. And you just attach it to the swivel, and then to do that, you have your guy with the kayak who's going to paddle out, kind of wait for the breakers to die down, and you just kind of time it. Once it gets over the breakers, the guy on the beach is holding the rod. You've got it on free spool. You can adjust the drag depending on what kind of rod you have. If it's feeding out too fast, you can kind of tighten it up a little bit. But mostly you're just trying to keep your thumb and keep tension on it, so that way it feeds out nice and smooth. You kind of see we're trying to get just a straight shot, and depending on what the current's doing, that dictates which way he paddles. We're pretty fortunate today, it's really calm, and so he's just going to take it straight out. And you just kind of eyeball it depending on which kind of tackle you have. If you have 1,000 yards, then you're trying to get to that 300-yard range. If you don't have quite as much, it's really not necessary to go out past the breakers. Really, you can get away with catching something there. So this will be one of our shorter rods. We have the bigger rod that's already out there that we put out just previously. So just kind of feed it. Once we think we're far enough, then we'll give him a signal, and then he'll go ahead and drop the bait. So once you have this set and you have your bait dropped, one of the most important parts is how you have the rod set and the reel set, so that way when the fish hits it, it's not going to just rip it out of the pole or it's going to run too much. So the tension is just enough that you can kind of slowly pull it out. That's actually a little bit too much to kind of dial it back, but basically keep it on retrieve, so that way it's not just free spool. And once you keep it there, you get the tension just about right. You kind of have to play with it and see which way works best for you, but keeping it on that just a little bit of tension is going to make it where when the fish bites the hook, it keeps that tension for you to be able to run up and be able to grab it in time. Once you do that, then you adjust the drag as you start to bite the fish.